After fertilization, a new sequence of events takes place. That eventually develops the fertilized ovum into a full-term fetus. This period between the conception and birth is known as gestation or pregnancy. It starts from the last menstrual period until birth and takes approximately 280 days, or 40 weeks. If pregnancy ends before 28 weeks, it's referred to as a miscarriage, while a gestation time of less than 37 weeks is referred to as premature, and if gestation continues beyond 42 weeks, it is considered postmature, regardless of the size of the fetus or other factors. During this phase, the developing offspring is called by different names, depending on the stage of development. Well, the fertilized ovum is referred to as a conceptus, or a zygote. It usually undergoes mitosis about 30 hours after it is formed. The period from fertilization through the 8th week of gestation is known as the embryonic period, with the zygote now being called an embryo. The period from the 9th week of gestation through birth is known as the fetal period, with the embryo now being called a fetus. At birth, the fetus is then known to be an infant. So, you must not get confused with these terms. So now, starting from the time right after fertilization, zygote takes about 3 to 5 days to pass through the fallopian tube and reach the uterus. This movement through the fallopian tube is facilitated by the epithelial secretions and beating of the cilia lining the epithelium and peristalsis. During its journey to the uterus, the zygote undergoes 5 or 6 rapid mitotic cell divisions. This series of cell divisions is referred to as the cleavage. Now, let's zoom in here to see this more clearly. First mitotic division occurs within 24 to 36 hours after fertilization, results in the formation of 2 daughter cells, known as blastomers. With each successive mitotic division, number of cells are doubled, finally, resulting in a 16-cell cluster, called a morula. The name morula refers to the mulberry, because cells form a cluster like mulberry. Once inside the uterus, it floats freely for several more days. Division does not stop here, but even morula continues to divide, forming a ball of approximately 100 cells, and consuming nutritive endometrial secretions, called uterine milk. While the uterine lining thickens, the ball of now tightly bound cells starts to secrete fluid and organize themselves around a fluid-filled cavity, the blastocele. Now, it is called a blastocyst. Let's zoom in here on the blastocyst. So, this is the cavity called blastocele, with cells arranged into 2 layers. The inner cells are referred to as the embryonic cells, which are surrounded by an outer layer of cells called trophoblasts, where the word troph means to feed or to nourish. This is because these trophoblasts develop into chorionic sac and the placenta. And placenta is actually the organ that provides the nutrition to the developing offspring. Also, the trophoblast excretes enzymes that degrade the zona pellucida to prepare the zygote for implantation, while the inner embryonic cells will later develop into the embryo. Well, these inner embryonic cells are totipotent at this stage, which means they have the potential to differentiate into any cell type in the human body. Now, the next step after blastocyst formation is implantation. Implantation usually occurs at the 5th to 7th day of ovulation. Implantation is actually the process by which the blastocyst gets attached to the endometrial lining of uterus and embeds itself here via trophoblast cells. Now, this process actually occurs in 4 stages. Let's have a look at these. So, after blastocyst formation, the trophoblast excretes enzymes that degrade the zona pellucida. This process, in which zygote breaks free of the zona pellucida, is known as hatching. And this is the first stage of implantation. Then, the blastocyst comes into contact with the implantation site of the endometrium, and this stage is referred to as apposition. Now, trophoblast cells of the blastocyst gets attached to the receptive endometrial epithelium, and this is known to be the adhesion. Lastly, invasive trophoblast cells cross the endometrial epithelial basement membrane and invade the endometrial stroma. This is called invasion. This is how implantation occurs. It is complete within 7 to 10 days of fertilization, and also can be accompanied by minor bleeding. Well, it's not always necessary for the implantation to be successful, and that is the reason that most of the blastocysts fail to implant and are shed with endometrium during menses. And that's why pregnancy requires several ovulation cycles to achieve. Well, you know already that the progesterone secreted from the corpus luteum during secretory phase of menstrual cycle prepares the uterus for implantation. Now, when the implantation occurs, there is further increase in the thickness of endometrium because of continuous secretion of progesterone from corpus luteum. At this stage, the endometrial stromal cells are called decidual cells, and the endometrium at the implanted area is called decidua. Now, next step is placentation. That is the formation of placenta. The trophoblastic cells of morula develop into cords attached to the decidua. Blood capillaries grow into these cords, and at about 21st day after fertilization, they start receiving blood pumped by the heart of embryo. At the same time, blood sinusoids develop around the trophoblastic cords that get blood from the mother. Trophoblastic cells form some vascular projections called placental villi, into which fetal capillaries grow. Thus, the final form of placenta has got 2 parts. The fetal part has 2 umbilical arteries, which carry fetal blood to the placental villi through the capillaries, and umbilical vein that returns blood back to fetus, and the maternal part, formed by uterine arteries, through which blood flows into sinusoids surrounding the villi, and uterine vein that returns blood back to mother's body. Now, during pregnancy, placenta secretes different hormones that are required to maintain pregnancy. These include human chorionic gonadotrophin, or HCG, estrogens, progesterone, and human chorionic somatomammotropin, normally in a non-pregnant woman. Menstruation occurs about 14 days after ovulation, and at this time, most of the endometrium is sloughed away from uterine wall and is expelled out. But what will happen if this still occurs after implantation? Yes, you got it right. Pregnancy will terminate in such case. So, in order to prevent this from happening, embryonic tissues secrete this human chorionic gonadotropin. It maintains viability of the corpus luteum and causes it to secrete large quantities of progesterone and estrogens that prevent menstruation and cause the endometrium to continue to grow and store large amounts of nutrients. Its secretion can be measured to 9 days after ovulation, shortly after implantation. Then, it rises rapidly to reach a maximum level at about 10 to 12 weeks of pregnancy, and then decreases back to a lower value by 16 to 20 weeks. Because by that time, large amounts of estrogen and progesterone effectively taking over the role of the corpus luteum, and the levels of HCG declines, and then continues at this level for the rest of the pregnancy. Also, it is similar to luteinizing hormone in terms of stimulating Leydig cells to secrete testosterone. That is necessary for the development of sex organs in male fetus. Well, HCG is detectable in human blood at 1 week after fertilization, while on home urine tests, it's detectable at 2 weeks after fertilization. Its appearance is one of the earliest signs of successful conception. Now, the estrogen causes the enlargement of mother's uterus, breasts, and external genitalia, and relaxes pelvic ligaments to facilitate the passage of the fetus through the birth canal at the time of labor. It increases in pregnancy, showing this trend. Next is the progesterone. Like estrogen, it causes the enlargement of mother's breasts. Also, it accelerates the proliferation and development of decidual cells in the endometrium of uterus. And most importantly, it inhibits the contraction of uterine muscles to prevent the expulsion of fetus during pregnancy. This graph shows here the increase of progesterone throughout pregnancy. You can compare the release of these 3 hormones by this graph. Now lastly, we have human chorionic somatomammotropin, or HCS, also known as placental lactogen. It is a growth hormone-like protein that enhances the growth of fetus by influencing the metabolic activities and promotes mammary gland growth, and estrogen that stimulates uterine expansion to accommodate the growing fetus. So, that was about the hormones secreted by placenta. Here, we are done with this part of pregnancy, where we talked about cleavage, implantation, and placentation. Now, in the next part, we are going to have a discussion on the maternal changes during pregnancy. So, make sure you watch it.
Explore our extensive library of over 1,800 video lectures to learn about a wide range of topics. Only on sqadia.com.